Welcome back to Dash Explore. If you've been following along with our channel, you know that we took our two daughters to Europe this past December and made the most incredible memories together as a family. I've had the best time editing these videos together over the last few weeks, and I've also had a lot of time to reflect on all the different aspects of this trip. In today's video, I'm here to share with you some of the biggest mistakes that we made in planning and executing this trip in the hopes that you don't make these same mistakes on your next family vacation. Mistake number one, not double and triple checking our airline reservations. This was something that came back to bite us not once, but 2 times on this trip, and this is something I will definitely be doing from here on out in the future. So we first booked our tickets for this trip back in September of 2023, and we were so excited for this trip. We began planning and watching videos and doing research, but then almost a month later, Andrew was checking his email, and somewhere in his spam folder or in his inbox, an email had gotten lost saying that our trip had been canceled. Apparently this email had been sent sometime that same day that we booked our trip, and one of our flights on our return trip home had been canceled, and they just canceled our entire trip. So nearly a month later, in October of 2023, we are frantically scrambling trying to rebook our trip. Luckily, the prices were still the same and we were still able to get most of our same flights on the same days, but this was a huge stressor on our trip, and luckily we hadn't booked any accommodations or tickets to attractions or anything on specific days yet, because if we had to shift our trip by just a couple of days, we could have really been screwed. So make sure you check your email or wherever you booked your flights within a day or a week of booking your trip, just to make sure that everything's in order. Our second mishap that could have been avoided if we had just checked our reservation was that somehow we accidentally booked Delaney as a lap infant. We'd been really intentional about trying to make sure we were paying for her seat, that she was gonna have her own seat. I had done research on car seats. I was very prepared for her to be in her own seat and not sitting in my lap for the 7-hour flight overseas. But unfortunately, somehow between picking the seats and the flights and checking out, it had downgraded her to a lap infant. And although this ended up saving us some money in the long run, it caused an incredible amount of stress about 72 hours before we left for our trip. I don't really remember how I came across this mistake, but it was a couple days before our trip. We were getting ready to leave, and all of a sudden I realized that she didn't have her own seat. So I spent hours on the phone with the airline, with our travel company that we booked through, just trying to get someone to let me buy her a seat. I was like, I will pay for it. You can take my money. I do not want this child sitting in my lap. And I was pretty much told, you just have to wait till you get to the gate to see what's available. And I think it's a little interesting that they wouldn't let me buy a seat for her. Maybe I just wasn't phrasing it correctly, whoever I talked to on the phone, but all we could do is wait. So those couple of days leading up to our trip, I had no idea if we were going to have a seat for her on the plane, what we were going to do with her car seat. It created a whole bunch of chaos. So the day of our trip came, we drove up to the airport, we arrived and checked in at our gate, and luckily our plane was almost completely empty and we were able to get her a seat. And they also had said once we arrive at our gate, they would also be able to let us know for our connecting flight if there were seats available, and they were able to reserve one for her as well there. So I definitely cried in the airport. I was so stressed about this, but if I had just checked our reservation, back in September or October or whenever all of this happened, I don't think it would have been a problem. But call your airline, check your email. I think honestly doing both is going to save you a lot of stress in the long run, and hopefully you don't run into anything like we did for our trip. And now on to mistake number 2, which was not calling to confirm our hotel reservations. Now, for the most part on this trip, we were staying in Airbnbs or we were staying with my friends. So I was able to communicate through the Airbnb app and confirm with our hostess that we were arriving at this time on this day, and made sure they had a pack and play available for us. And I was very diligent and paid attention to trying to make sure that all of that was confirmed before we left. But for some reason, I did not think to do any of that for our hotel in Disneyland, and that wasted a lot of time for us. So we arrive at the Hotel Cheyenne at Disneyland Paris, and we're going to check in, and we find out that only Andrew is listed on the hotel reservation. Me and the girls are not listed at all. And we informed them that we needed a pack and play, and they weren't even sure if they had any extras available to put in our room. So we spent about an hour to 45 minutes just sitting in the lobby waiting for them to check on all of these things. And come to find out from the man at the reception, we booked using Capital One Travel. It's the credit card that we use, and something about how booking Disney resorts through Capital One Travel, they kind of contract out through booking.com. And when they do that, somehow they don't send all of the information to Disney from that website. For some reason, stuff gets lost out in the internet there. So I think it is really important, especially if you are staying at any Disney resort and booking through Capital One Travel or any other travel service, that you make sure you call the Disney resort to confirm your reservation, confirm the people that are going to be there, any special accommodations you might need, and make sure everything is squared away before you leave on your trip. And long story short, we ended up buying a 2-day park hopper pass for our time in Disneyland Paris, and we knew we would be traveling from Germany to Disneyland Paris that day. So we were hoping that we could, arrive at our hotel, check in really quick, drop our stuff off, and get to the park so that we could spend as much of that first day in the parks as we could before going home and getting sleep. But unfortunately, we had to spend 45 minutes to an hour just trying to get all this sorted out in the hotel. And, if I had just called the night before when we were in Germany, or even, on the trains that morning, something could have been solved in, even 30 or 45 minutes on the phone would have been much better than just wasting our time standing in the lobby when we could have been in the parks. But this was also the first hotel experience for either girl. Whenever we've traveled with them, we've either been staying with family and friends or staying in the Airbnb. So we didn't even think to call and confirm with the hotel. So take this as your sign. Make sure if you booked hotels that you've called and confirmed, and make sure that everything is there and that you're gonna have the things that you need for your family. All right, the third mistake we made on this trip was trying to go to too many places. Now, looking back, I don't regret any of the places we went to. We saw incredible places, we made incredible memories, we ate delicious food, but it was a lot of work, and it was really hard to have to pack up and move every couple of days. We went to 4 different locations, so we had to unpack and repack 4 different times on this trip, as opposed to just maybe once or twice as you do on a normal trip. And not only did we have to pack everything back up, but we also had to move all of our stuff and our children on trains and to our friends' cars, and it was a lot of work. And if you watched our packing video, you know that we packed into 2 carry-on bags and 2 backpacks. So we had very minimal space, and everything had to fit just right, and getting everything back into our suitcases perfectly was so much work. So I think we tried to do too much, and that was one of my biggest stressors going into the trip. It was something that I knew we had committed too much to, but it got to a certain point in the planning and the research where we didn't want to backtrack. We were so excited about all the places that we were going. So maybe if you are still in the early stages of planning a Europe trip with your family, I've caught you before you got too excited about too many places, and maybe you can dial it back. But I think something that hopefully we will take going into the future is to not go to as many places, and just to try to enjoy the towns that we're in. Because also on that same note, every place we left, we were like, oh, I wish we had one more day, or I wish we had just a little bit more time, because we were in Metz for less than 24 hours. We were in Stuttgart for, I think, just under 48 hours. We were in these places and we just didn't have time to see and explore them and just relax and look around. And I think, if we'd taken one place out, we might have been able to spread our time a little bit more and enjoy the places that we were in. And finally, mistake number 4 is not buying bigger suitcases. So I mentioned just a minute ago that we packed all of our stuff into 2 carry-on suitcases and 2 backpacks. And, yes, we did it. It was a little bit more manageable, being that we had to carry everything ourselves, but it was really, really hard to pack all of our stuff into those suitcases. I believe I mentioned in our video about baby gear that some of our baby gear took up an entire half of the suitcase. The inflatable bed that we brought and the blackout tent, those were things that just were really large and took up a big chunk of our suitcase. And we maybe didn't need the blackout tent, but at some points there was 4 of us staying in a room, and we just knew that sleep is such an important thing, especially on a trip where there's jet lag and all kinds of stuff, that we wanted to set our kids up for the most successful sleep that they could get. So we decided that we were going to bring those things, but we just had such minimal space in our carry-on suitcases for 4 of us that I really think that we should have just invested in bigger suitcases. We also knew that when we booked our trip that our tickets were going to come with 1 free checked bag per ticket. So we were planning to check 2 bags, but we just didn't think to buy bigger suitcases. And I'm not saying that we needed to buy the colossally large checked bag suitcases. We didn't really need anything that big, but just have something with a little bit more space to give us a little bit more wiggle room, and even just to bring home more souvenirs. We did bring a collapsible duffel bag, which we used as a carry-on bag on the way home, which was also a lifesaver, because when we bought some pretty bulky stuff in Disneyland Paris, and to be able to just throw everything in there on the way home was really nice. But I think if we're able to buy bigger checked bag suitcases in the future, it would just make packing and repacking for the trip so much easier. So if you know you're going to be checking bags, but you only have these carry-on size suitcases, just do yourself a favor, buy a bigger bag. Especially if you're traveling with your family, you will really appreciate the extra space. So I know I'm here today talking to you about all the mistakes that we made on our trip, and you're probably thinking about all the things that could possibly go wrong while you're gone, but I'm here to just reiterate, take the trip. Travel can be such an enriching and fun experience for the whole family, and don't let all of the stressors and little things get in your head and overwhelm you and keep you from getting out and exploring the world. Think of travel as a learning experience and just take it one trip at a time and enjoy all of the moments and the memories that you'll make together with your family. So I think that about wraps it up for today. Those are some of the big mistakes that we made on our trip, and that hopefully I will learn from those mistakes and our trips in the future will go a lot smoother. And hopefully you too can learn from our mistakes and you won't run into any of the same problems that we ran into on our trip, and that everything will go smoothly. Thank you again for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this video or if you learned something, if you give this video a like. Also, if you are learning a lot from our channel or you want to follow along for more family travel tips, make sure you click subscribe and ring the notification bell so that you can get notified when we post new videos. You can also head over to Instagram and follow us at @Explore for more behind the scenes fun on all of our family adventures. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.